3 hours after her wedding vows, Lady Endellion Crowhurst slipped into her husband's study, a blade hidden in her stocking and revenge burning behind her smile. She had smiled at the altar. She had let him kiss her. And now, while Blackmoore Hall slept, she searched for the one thing that would see him hanged. Looking for something, wife?
This will see him.
She froze. Lord Tarquin stood in the doorway candlelight, catching the cruel curve of his mouth, his shirt half unbuttoned, watching her like a man who had been waiting. "I couldn't sleep," she whispered. Neither could I. He stepped closer. Strange how you flinched when I touched your hand today, almost as though you despised
really
me.
Startled.
Her heart slammed against her ribs. Did he know? Had he always known? But Endellion had not buried her brother in a shallow grave, had not stitched her grief into a wedding gown to be undone on her first night as his wife. She lifted her chin. She smiled. "Despise you, my lord. I married you, didn't I?"
I married you, didn't I?
He took her hand, slowly, almost tenderly, and began to peel back the silk of her glove, toward the scar she had been hiding for 7 long years. Did Tarquin marry her knowing exactly who she was? Will Endellion finish what her brother could not? Or has she already walked into the trap of a man far more dangerous than she ever imagined? If your heart is racing, please tap that subscribe button right now. I am begging you. Part 2 is dropping very soon, and you do not want to miss what Tarquin finds beneath that glove, or what Endellion does next. Hit subscribe. Stay with me. The story is only just beginning. The candle flickered between them. Endellion did not breathe, as Tarquin's fingers slid lower, the silk of her glove giving way like water under his touch. 1 more inch and he would see it. 1 more inch, and 7 years of patience would shatter on the floor of his study. She closed her eyes, and she remembered. 6 months ago, Endellion Crowhurst had been nothing more than the quiet daughter of a dying baron. She lived in a crumbling manor at the edge of the moors, with damp in the walls and silver they had already begun to sell to keep the fires lit. Her days were small. She read in the morning. She walked the cliffs in the afternoon. She sat by her father's bed at night and listened to him cough up what was left of his lungs. People in the village called her plain, too tall, too sharp around the eyes, a spinster waiting to happen. Endellion did not mind. She had her brother Hadrian, and Hadrian was enough. He was 3 years older, golden where she was dark, laughing where she was still. He had ridden off to London the spring she turned 20, promising to make their fortune and come home with a future for them both. He came home in a coffin. The magistrate said it was a duel, a matter of honour over a card game. Hadrian had been reckless, they said, hot-tempered. He had drawn first, they said, and Lord Tarquin Blackmoore, may God preserve him, had only defended himself. Endellion did not believe a single word. Hadrian had never touched a card in his life. He hated gambling the way other men hated rats, and the bruise on his jaw, the one no one wanted to speak of, had not come from any pistol duel. It was the shape of a fist. She buried him on a grey afternoon, with rain soaking through her boots, and her father too ill to stand at the grave. That night she sat in the kitchen with her old nurse, Morwenna, and did not weep. "You have that look," Morwenna said softly, "the one your mother had before she did something stupid." "It is not stupid." "Child, what are you planning?" Endellion stared into the dying fire. Outside, the wind clawed at the shutters. Somewhere far across the country, in a great house she had never seen, a man was sleeping easy on the bones of her brother. "I am planning to marry him." Morwenna dropped the cup she was holding. It cracked on the stone. "Endellion, no. He is looking for a wife. I heard it from the curate. A quiet wife, a respectable wife, a nobody he can hide behind while he climbs another inch up the king's ladder." Her voice did not shake. "I will be that nobody. I will smile at his table. I will warm his bed. And when he sleeps, I will find what I need to send him to the gallows. You do not know what kind of man he is. I know exactly what kind of man he is. Morwenna reached across the table and gripped her wrist, hard, the way she used to when Endellion was a girl about to run into the sea. Promise me one thing. Whatever happens in that house, do not let him see this. Her thumb pressed against the small white scar on Endellion's palm, the one Hadrian had given her by accident with a kitchen knife when they were children. He looked for it on your brother's body. He will look for it on yours. Endellion had not understood her nurse then. In Tarquin's study, 6 months later, she understood. His fingers reached the edge of the silk, and he smiled. Tell me, my dear wife, he murmured, did your brother ever speak of me before he died? Her blood went cold. How could he possibly know she had a brother at all? The room tilted. Endellion felt her knees lock, the way they had locked at her brother's grave. She gave him the smallest smile she could find. I have no brother, my lord. Tarquin's thumb stilled on her glove. He did not move. He only watched her, the way a cat watches a bird that has not yet realized the window is shut. No? My only family is my father. It is in the marriage papers. Ah, his voice was soft, almost kind. Forgive me. I must be thinking of someone else's wife. He let her hand drop. She did not breathe until he turned away. He walked to the sideboard and poured 2 glasses of wine, slow, deliberate, as though they had all the night in the world. Endellion stood in the centre of the room with her stocking still warm against the hidden steel, her pulse roaring so loud she was certain he could hear it. He had known. He had known, and he had let her say the lie, and now the lie sat between them like a third person in the room. Sit, Endellion. It was the first time he had used her name. She sat. He placed the glass in front of her and lowered himself into the chair opposite, and for a long moment he simply looked at her, the way a man looks at a horse he is deciding whether to keep or shoot. I will tell you a story, he said. My lord, the hour is late. Sit. She sat. The fire cracked behind him and threw long shadows across his face, and for the first time she truly saw the man she had married, not the cold figure at the altar, not the rumour in the village. A man with eyes like winter water and something underneath them she could not name. 3 years ago, he began, a young man climbed through a window of my London house at 2 in the morning. He held a pistol to my valet's head until the poor wretch told him where I slept. He came into my bedroom. He said his name was Hadrian Crowhurst. He said I had ruined his sister. The wineglass shook in her hand. I had never heard the name Crowhurst in my life. You lie. I do not lie about murder, Endellion. I lie about many things, not that. Then why is he dead? Because someone wanted me to think I had killed him, and someone wanted you to think the same. He leaned forward. I did not fight your brother in any duel. I found him already bleeding in the alley behind my house. He died in my arms before the magistrate arrived, and the last word he spoke was your name. The glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the floor. You are lying. I have his ring. I have his coat. I have everything he was carrying when he was found. Tarquin's smile was not cruel now. It was tired. That is why I married you. I needed to draw out the man who killed your brother, and I needed bait he could not resist, a grieving sister, walking willingly into the wolf's house. Endellion could not speak. She had come here to destroy him. He had married her to use her. And somewhere out there, the man who had truly cut Hadrian's throat had just heard the news that the last living Crowhurst was sleeping under Lord Blackmoore's roof. A floorboard creaked in the hall. Tarquin's head snapped toward the door. His hand moved, quiet and quick, to the pistol at his belt. He is already here, he whispered. Endellion's blood turned to ice. She reached for her stocking, for the blade that suddenly felt like a child's toy, and asked the only question that mattered. "Who, Tarquin? Who is here?" He did not answer, because the candle behind them, the one she had lit on her way in, blew out. Darkness swallowed the room. For one breath, too, Endellion could hear nothing but the fire and her own heart. Then Tarquin's hand closed over her wrist and pulled her down behind the heavy oak desk. "Stay," he breathed against her ear, "and do not make a sound." She did not. Not because he had told her to, but because every instinct she had ever buried was suddenly alive and screaming. The blade came out of her stocking. She held it the way Hadrian had once shown her in the kitchen, 3 fingers high, thumb braced, blade angled up. Hadrian, who had laughed and said no sister of his would ever need to use it. Hadrian, who had been wrong. A floorboard sighed in the corridor, then another. Tarquin moved like a man who had done this before. He slid along the wall, pistol drawn, breathing slow and even. He reached the door, pressed his shoulder to the wood, and waited. The handle turned. He let it turn fully. He let the door drift open an inch. And then he kicked it the rest of the way, hard, into whoever stood on the other side. A man cried out. Tarquin was on him in a heartbeat, the two of them crashing down into the corridor, and Endellion was on her feet before she had decided to move. She flew through the door with her blade raised, and she saw the intruder's face in the spill of moonlight from the long window. She knew him. She knew him. "Stop," she said. Tarquin had a knee on the man's chest and the pistol pressed under his jaw. "You know him?" "He was at my brother's funeral." Her voice did not sound like her own. "He carried the coffin. He stood beside my father and wept." The man on the floor was breathing hard, his fine coat torn, his powdered hair come loose. His name was Mr. Ambrose Kenwyn, and he had been Hadrian's dearest friend since they were boys, throwing stones at gulls along the cliffs. He had sat at her kitchen table. He had eaten her bread. "Endellion," Ambrose gasped. "Thank God. Thank God you are alive. He has been keeping you here, has he not? Tell me what he has done to you. Tell me, and I swear before God, I will get you out of this house tonight." She opened her mouth, and Tarquin spoke first, very quiet. "Ask him, Endellion. Ask him how he knew which window of my study to come to. Ask him how he passed 3 of my men in the garden without raising a single alarm." Ambrose's eyes flickered. It was the smallest thing, the flicker of a man who has been asked a question he did not prepare for. And in that flicker, Endellion saw her brother's face the morning he left for London, laughing, promising to be careful, climbing into a carriage that Ambrose Kenwyn had arranged. The carriage that had taken him to the wrong address. The carriage that had driven him into an alley behind a house he had no business being near. She lowered the blade. She crouched down beside him. She put her hand against his cheek, the way she had once put her hand against her brother's coffin. "Ambrose," she whispered, "why is there blood on your cuff?" He went still. There was a small dark stain at the edge of his sleeve. Fresh, not his own. He had come straight from somewhere, and that somewhere had bled. "Endellion," he said, "listen to me." "Whose blood is that, Ambrose?" "Listen to me, you stupid girl." He moved fast. Faster than a grieving friend ever should. His hand came up, a small pistol where there should have been nothing, and Tarquin struck him across the temple with the butt of his own gun before the hammer could fall. Ambrose went limp. The pistol slid across the floor and stopped at Endellion's feet. She picked it up. Her hand did not shake. In the silence she could hear, somewhere downstairs, a woman beginning to scream, long and high and terrible. A voice she knew. Morwenna, her old nurse, who had ridden with her to this house and had begged her to come home. Morwenna, who had been sleeping in the servants' wing. Tarquin met her eyes across the body of the man who had killed her brother. "Run," he said. and Endellion ran. She flew down the stairs with the pistol heavy in her hand and her wedding gown tangling at her ankles. The screams came from the kitchens. She knew the way only because Morwenna had insisted on showing her every door of this house the day they arrived. In case, the old woman had said, in case you ever need to run. She had not understood then. She understood now. The kitchen door was open. The fire was out. And Morwenna lay on the flagstones with her grey hair loose across her face, and a man knelt beside her with a knife. He looked up when Endellion came in. It was not a man she knew well. It was a man she had seen only at a distance, years ago, who had been pointed out to her as a person of consequence. A friend of the family. A guardian who had promised, should anything happen to her father, to see the Crowhurst children settled. His name was Sir Ronan Trevithick, and he was holding the knife that had killed her brother. Put down the pistol, child. She did not. Endellion, look at me. I have known you since you were in the cradle. Put it down. Morwenna was still breathing, the smallest rise of her chest, but there was blood on the stones, so much of it, spreading dark and slow toward the hearth. You killed Hadrian. Your brother was a fool. He came to London asking questions about the estate, about the money, about what was left after your father dies. Sir Ronan stood slowly. There is nothing left, Endellion. I have spent it. Every penny. For 20 years I have spent it. Your father was too sick to notice. Your brother was too young to ask. And you were a girl. And girls do not ask. Hadrian asked. Hadrian asked the wrong man at the wrong dinner. And Ambrose? Ambrose Kenwyn owes me more money than he will ever earn. He has been mine for years. She thought of every Christmas Sir Ronan had sent gifts, every name day, every letter signed in his careful hand. Uncle Ronan, she had called him as a child. Uncle Ronan, who had carried her on his shoulders along the cliffs. The pistol began to shake. Give it to me, he said softly. Give it to me, and I will see your nurse to a doctor. We will say this was an intruder. Blackmoore will hang for it, and you and I will go home to Cornwall. And if I do not? He looked down at Morwenna. Then she dies in the next minute, and I tell the magistrate that you killed her in a fit of bridal hysteria. Either way, child, I walk out of this house a free man. The pistol in her hand had one shot. One shot for the man who had murdered her brother and her childhood, and the woman bleeding on the floor. But if she fired, Morwenna would die before any doctor came. Sir Ronan would not lift a finger to save her. He had said so. And Endellion did not know how to stop a wound like that. She knew only that Morwenna had rocked her to sleep when she was small, and had braided her hair the morning of the wedding, and had whispered, even then, that it was not too late to turn back. She had not turned back. She lowered the pistol. Sir Ronan smiled. He took one step toward her with his hand outstretched, and Endellion threw the pistol across the room with everything she had. It clattered into the far corner. He turned his head to follow it for 1/2 of 1 second. That was all she needed. She drove the blade from her stocking up under his ribs the way Hadrian had once shown her in the kitchen, 3 fingers high, thumb braced, angled up. He made a small sound, almost surprised. The knife in his hand fell first. Then he fell. She did not watch him die. She was already on her knees beside Morwenna, pressing both hands against the wound, and the old woman's eyes opened just enough to find her face. Foolish girl, Morwenna whispered. I told you not to come. Stay with me. Promise me one thing. Anything. Do not let that man bury me. Let your husband do it. Her hand closed on Endellion's wrist, and then it did not. Footsteps thundered in the corridor. Tarquin appeared in the doorway with blood on his shirt that was not his own, and stopped when he saw what was on the floor. Endellion did not look up. She is gone, she said. He crossed the kitchen and knelt beside her in the blood and the broken china, and for the first time since she had walked into Blackmoore Hall, he touched her like a husband, his hand on her hair, his forehead against her temple. He did not speak. Outside, far away, a horse was galloping down the drive at full speed, hooves striking the gravel like gunshots in the dark. Someone was riding for the magistrate, and Endellion did not yet know whether it was a friend. The horse was a friend. The rider was Tarquin's own steward, sent to fetch the magistrate the moment the first shot was heard, and he came back with 3 men on horseback and a doctor who could do nothing for Morwenna and only a little for Ambrose. They carried Sir Ronan's body out, covered in a kitchen cloth. They carried Morwenna out, covered in the shawl she had been wearing when she came up from Cornwall. Endellion watched from the front steps. Tarquin had put his coat around her shoulders. Her hands were still red. The magistrate was an old man who had known Sir Ronan for 30 years and could not look at his face on the stretcher. He listened to Tarquin speak. He listened to Endellion speak. He looked at the ledger Tarquin had quietly placed on the hall table, the ledger Hadrian had died trying to bring home, and he closed it slowly and said only, "God forgive us, all of us, that this was allowed to grow so long in the dark." Ambrose Kenwyn did not hang. He turned king's evidence before the sun came up. He gave them every name, every bribe, every false signature Sir Ronan had ever made him write. He was sentenced to transportation 14 years across the sea, and Endellion did not go to the courthouse to hear it. She had been a girl who ate bread at his table. She did not need to be a woman who watched him weep in chains. The estate was returned to her in pieces. Some of it could be sold back, some of it was gone forever. Her father lived long enough to be told that his son was avenged, and he died 3 weeks later, in his own bed, with her hand in his and a small smile on his mouth. She buried him beside Hadrian. She buried Morwenna at their feet, because Morwenna had raised them both and would have wanted to scold them through eternity. Tarquin stood with her at every grave. He did not speak. He did not need to. On the night they came home from the last funeral, she sat beside him in the study where they had first truly seen one another, and she peeled off her glove without being asked. She turned her palm to the firelight. The small white scar that her brother had given her with a kitchen knife when she was 9 years old. "I lied to you about him," she said. "On our wedding night. I am sorry." "I know. Why did you let me?" "Because you were frightened, and because a woman who can lie to a man who frightens her is a woman who can survive him if he turns out to be the wrong sort of husband." She looked at him for a long time. "And what sort of husband have you turned out to be?" He took her hand. He did not peel back the silk this time, because there was none. He only pressed his thumb against the scar her brother had left, gently, the way one presses against a memory that still hurts. "The sort," he said, "who would like, very much, to be forgiven for marrying you under false pretenses, and who would like, even more, to begin again, not as enemies, not as bait, as whatever this is that we have not yet named." She thought of the girl who had walked the cliffs of Cornwall with a brother who laughed too loudly. She thought of the woman who had crossed a dark kitchen with a blade in her stocking. She did not know yet who she would be tomorrow, but she knew she would not be alone. She closed her hand around his. "Then begin again, Tarquin," she said softly. "And this time do try not to lie." He almost smiled. Outside, the wind moved through the moors of Blackmoore Hall, and somewhere in the dark, for the first time in 7 years, Endellion Crowhurst slept without grief, sitting on her chest. The candle did not go out. Spring came late to the moors that year. Endellion stood at the open window of what had once been Tarquin's study and was now hers as much as his, a cup of tea cooling in her hand and the wind tugging at the loose strands of her hair. 6 months had passed since the night her wedding gown had soaked up a dead man's blood. 6 months of quiet mornings. 6 months of slow conversations across breakfast tables. 6 months of learning the man she had married, piece by piece, the way one learns a language one had never expected to need. He came up behind her and rested his chin against the top of her head. He smelled of horse and the cold outside. "There is a letter," he said. "From whom?" "It does not matter. I burned it." She turned in his arms. "Tarquin. It was from a man who claimed to know your brother in London, a man who said there were things about Sir Ronan that the magistrate never uncovered. A man who wanted to meet you alone, in a coaching inn, 3 counties from here, and would name no friend you and I share. And you burned it." "I burned it because I did not trust it, and because we have buried enough people, you and I, for one lifetime." He paused. "But I have kept the ashes. If you wish to know what was in it, I will tell you every word I read. The choice belongs to you, not me." She thought about it. Truly thought. She thought of Hadrian, who would have torn the country apart for one more clue. She thought of Morwenna, who had told her once that some doors are closed by God himself, and a wise woman does not pry them open with her teeth. She thought of the small life beginning, just barely, beneath her own ribs, the life she had whispered about to no one yet, not even to him. "Let it stay, Ash," she said. He let out a breath she had not realized he was holding. She turned back to the window. Far across the moors, where the road bent toward the sea, a small figure was walking, a woman, cloaked, slow, not yet close enough to see clearly. Endellion watched her for a long moment. Tarquin. Ah, did Sir Ronan have a wife? His arms tightened around her, just a little. He did, he said. She was sent to a convent in France 20 years ago. Everyone believed she was dead. Everyone. Yes. The figure on the road kept walking. She did not hurry. She had the unhurried walk of a person who has been travelling for a very long time and knows exactly where she is going. Endellion set the cup of tea down on the sill. She thought about the child beneath her heart. She thought about the husband at her back. She thought about the long, strange road that had brought her to this window, with this name, in this house, with this man's hand resting against her hip, as if he had always belonged there. She thought about the girl on the Cornish cliffs, who had once believed her life would be small and quiet and unimportant. She had been wrong about a great many things. She was learning, slowly, to be glad of it. Whoever she is, Endellion said softly, we will meet her at the door, together. Tarquin pressed a kiss to her temple. Together, he said. The woman on the road came on. And whatever she carried with her, whatever name she meant to lay down at the gates of Blackmoore Hall, would have to wait for another evening, and another telling, and another candle lit in another quiet room. Because that, my dear viewers, is a story for next time. So tell me, who do you think the woman on the road is? Is she Sir Ronan's lost wife, come home for a vengeance of her own? Is she someone Hadrian loved in London, carrying a secret Endellion has not yet imagined? Or is she something else entirely, something neither Endellion nor Tarquin is ready for? Drop your guess in the comments. I read every single one. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you for staying with Endellion and Tarquin all the way to the end. If their story moved you, even a little, please, please tap that subscribe button before you go. It costs you nothing, and it means everything to me. Hit the bell so the next story finds you the moment it drops. Share this with the friend who loves a slow burn and a sharp blade, and come back soon. Because the woman on the road is closer than you think. And I cannot wait to tell you what she says when she knocks.